All right, tonight we are going to peel back those plastic skeletons and candy wrappers because we're looking for the ancient beating heart of a holiday we all think we know. Let's dig into the three ancient faces of Halloween.
I mean, we see it all, right? The fun, the commercial stuff, the spooky movies. But is that really all there is to it? Or, just maybe, is there a much older story hiding right under our noses?
Just look at this contrast. It's pretty wild. Where we see, a fun night for the kids, our ancestors saw this critical moment in time, a hinge balanced between light and dark. Where we see a bag of candy, they saw a desperate need to appease powerful and, yes, sometimes dangerous spirits. For them, this was a night all about magic and, frankly, survival.
So, what is Halloween really about then? Well, when you boil it all down, it's built on three super primal human needs. First, ritual, that need to feel some control over our world. Then divination, the desire to know what's coming. And finally, haunting, our deep need to connect with those we've lost.
Okay, so let's start with the first one, ritual. For our ancestors, this whole thing kicked off with a simple and honestly a terrifying question that they had to ask themselves every single year.
Okay, so I want you to imagine this. We're in Ireland, about 2,500 years ago. The Celts back then, they didn't really see 4 seasons like we do. For them, there were just 2, a season of light and a season of dark. And October 31st, that was the tipping point. They called it Samhain. It was the end of summer, the moment the world plunged into darkness.
And this is where it gets really fascinating, We tend to think of time as a straight line, right? Past, present, future, boom. But the Celts, they saw it as a circle. Birth, abundance, death, and then rebirth. And on Samhain, because of that circular view, they believed the past and the future could actually touch. It was the one night the veil between worlds grew incredibly thin.
And look, this wasn't some kind of metaphor. For people 2,500 years ago, winter was a real, present, life-or-death danger. The harvest was in, the world was getting cold, and the number one question on everyone's mind was, will my family and I make it through to see the light again? That fear, it drove everything.
So, you can actually trace how these ancient rituals changed over centuries. You've got the Celts starting it all with their bonfires and masks. Then the Romans come along and layer on their own traditions, things with apples and fertility. Way later, Christianity kind of absorbs the whole thing, making November 1st All Saints' Day. And then finally, Irish immigrants bring all of these tangled up traditions across the ocean to America.
But one of the most iconic rituals we still do, carving pumpkins, it all comes from this one single, powerful Irish folktale. It's about a man who was, just a little too clever for his own good.
So the story goes that this guy, Stingy Jack, a real trickster, meets the devil in a pub. For his first trick, he convinces the devil to turn into a coin to pay the bar tab, and then he traps him. The devil has to promise not to take his soul for 10 whole years. Well, a decade later, Jack does it again, this time trapping the devil up in an apple tree.
So the devil is furious, right? And he makes this final, fateful promise. He would never, ever claim Jack's soul. And Jack, he thinks he's won. He thinks he's cheated both death and damnation itself.
But here's the twist. When Jack eventually died, he couldn't get into heaven because of his sinful life, but he also couldn't get into hell because of the devil's promise. So he was doomed. Doomed to just wander in the darkness between worlds forever. All he had was a single burning ember from hell, which he carried inside a carved-out turnip to light his way. That's Jack-o'-the-lantern. And when Irish immigrants came to America, they found that pumpkins were way easier to carve than turnips. And just like that, the jack-o'-lantern we know was born.
Now, that same deep fear of the coming winter, it also gave rise to our second ancient need, divination.
I mean, it just makes perfect sense, doesn't it? If you were staring down a long, dark winter with no idea if you'd make it, wouldn't you do pretty much anything for even a tiny glimpse of what the future held? And this is wild. This is where so many of our modern party games actually come from. Bobbing for apples? That was a serious fertility ritual. The person who caught an apple was believed to be the next one to get married. Or how about tossing an apple peel over your shoulder? The initial it formed on the ground was supposed to be the first letter of your future spouse's name. These weren't just silly games. They were dead serious attempts to read the future.
And that leads us to the third, and maybe the most spiritual core of the holiday, haunting. This whole idea is rooted in that belief we talked about, that on this one night, the veil between our world and the spirit world is just thin enough to cross.
One of the most powerful rituals for this was something called the dumb supper. Just picture this, a family preparing and eating an entire meal in complete, total silence. They'd set an extra place at the table, a full plate and everything, for a loved one who had passed away. And they did it all in the hope that their spirit might actually join them, or, at the very least, send some kind of sign that they were okay.
You know, the person whose story really inspired this whole piece, he shared something incredibly personal about this. He said just a few days after his mother passed away, he was lying awake in his room, and he heard a voice, clear as day, say, "I'm all right." He said it wasn't his mother's voice, but the message, it was absolutely undeniable. And he heard it 3 times.
And really, whether you believe that experience was supernatural or psychological or something else entirely, it doesn't matter. It speaks to this profound, universal human need, doesn't it? We all want a sign. We all just desperately want to know that the people we've lost are at peace.
So when you kind of put it all together, you start to realize that even in our modern commercial Halloween, these 3 ancient threads, ritual, divination, and haunting, they're still woven into pretty much everything we do.
No, really, think about it. We perform the ritual of carving a jack-o'-lantern, right? We're carrying on Jack's story and symbolically protecting our homes. We practice divination with all those party games that have their roots in ancient fortune-telling. And we absolutely honor the idea of haunting every single time we tell a ghost story or watch a horror movie, acknowledging that, hey, for at least one night, the spirit world feels very, very close.
And that brings us back to Stingy Jack. His story leaves us with this question that goes so far beyond just Halloween. I mean, he was the ultimate cautionary tale, right? And it kind of forces us to ask ourselves, when our own story is told, which will it be? An example to follow or a warning? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me for this one.